Pat Caddell is a pollster and political analyst, having worked for the presidential campaigns of George McGovern, Jimmy Carter, Gary Hart, Joe Biden, and Jerry Brown. For more than 20 years, he's been an outspoken critic of Democrat and Republican questionable practices, their shameless rhetoric, and their outright corruption. He's a Fox News contributor and a truth teller in a world of political spinmeisters. Pat Caddell, welcome.
Good to be here.
You have been highly critical about the Republicans taking on Medicare. Why?
Because it's a suicidal move politically. They do this every time the Republicans win a majority. They did this after the 46 election. They did it after 94. George Bush did it after his election in 04. They take on entitlements by themselves. Problem is, for years in the political DNA of the country has been a sense that Republicans want to kill Social Security and Medicare. Whether that's true or not and whether it needs to be fixed is not the issue. The problem is that fear. The Democrats wanted them to do this, wanted the Republicans to lead with it. They got elected. Mallory, in 2010, the issue that elected the Republican House was Obamacare.
Wasn't it against big government,
big
spending, right, and entitlements?
It was that, but in the centerpiece of that was Obamacare. The most decisive issue, if you really, drill down on the polling data, was among independents who favored the repeal of Obamacare. They voted 85-7 for Republicans. That was the decisive margin that elected most Republicans. They've abandoned health care. They've abandoned Obamacare.
Okay. Let's put aside the fact you're a Democrat. Yeah. You're now a Republican.
I'm just doing an analysis.
Fine. You're now a Republican. No. You're talking to the Republican caucus. What are you going to tell them to do?
Well, the first thing they should do is go back to the issue that got them elected, which is repealing Obamacare, which is about big government. What they need to do on Medicare, here's the problem, Mary. In 1972, no Democrat could have gone to China except Nixon. I mean, no Democrat could go. Nixon had to go. He had the credentials. Republicans would have killed any Democrat who went and opened the door to China. Well, it's a similar thing with entitlements for Republicans. Plus, it's such a huge issue unless there's a consensus. Now, the president is not leading on this issue. The Democrats don't want to touch it. The Republicans should have challenged them on Medicare, stayed with Obamacare, and dealt with cutting the budgets and spending, which is a critical issue, and economic growth. I'm telling you, you saw it in the 26th district in New York, as red a district as you could find in New York. A Republican should have won that handily.
The House leadership said the reason they lost it was because of a third-party candidate, a Tea Party candidate.
The Democrat got 47%. The Tea Party candidate got less than 9%. The fact is that the Republicans should have won that seat. If the third-party candidate was under 10, they should have won it handily. Here's the problem. 58-21 voters in that district wanted to repeal Obamacare. By almost the same margin, about 59-26, they opposed the Orion Plan. What was the issue? The Ryan Plan. And the Democrats are now emboldened. They want to use this. And it's just politically not smart. It's not a question of the substance. The question is, but the substance has to be practical politically. You don't jeopardize your majority. Who elected the Republicans in 2010? Senior citizens, independents. Who opposes this? Senior citizens and independents.
Tell us what the messaging should be for both sides, Republicans and Democrats.
Well, I think the Democrats have got their messaging is clearly their messaging is they want to be back in power. They're going to attack the Republicans for being for the wealthy, and for tax cuts for the rich, not helping ordinary people. The Republicans are campaigning on spending. The problem is the real issue in this country is neither of those. We have two tired parties talking about the same things. Rome is burning and the country's looking for a new vision. Look at the economy. The problem is both parties are guilty of how we got into this mess with the budget. They are not working together. They're interested in is preserving or getting back their political power. They're not interested in offering a vision to the country. And I'm going to tell you this right now. Something snapped in America last week or so, when the unemployment numbers went back up, housing collapsed. And when I say something snapped in the country, it was very important. People said, who had kept thinking, well, things probably are going to get better. All of a sudden, collectively, the country went, oh my gosh, it's not going to get better. And you could see the movement politically, and it's affecting the president, but it's also affecting a bigger effect of politics, which is we want some other answer. And so far, no party has stepped into that anti-establishment or sense of change environment, I think.
Let's take a look at some of the people running for the Republican nomination. Romney, is he doing anything?
Well, Romney has the issue of the economy. That has been that's his bread and butter. I can do the economy better. He was doing it when the economy was better. His problem is the Republican Party is he's suspect on his views because of Romney Care. Given the opposition to Obamacare, and the Democrats love to say we got the idea from Romney. His latest statements about cap and trade, I think in some ways he's acting like he thinks he's a nominee. The problem is he has a very tough nomination. He's not a very strong front runner, and he could be tripped up. But he is a candidate who's got a strong issue. He can run on the economy. And Obama would have a tough time with someone who can make a credible case on the economy.
Plenty?
Plenty is an interesting person, mainly because I call him the remainder man of the race. He's a guy that doesn't seem to offend many people, doesn't inspire a lot of enthusiasm, seems relatively acceptable, and is promoting. He came out with an economic plan. He got a little caught, I guess. Jack Welch at GE first, he was citing him, supporting it, and then Jack Welch this morning said, oh no, I think that's a disaster for the election. Not good for Plenty. I'm sure he'll hear about it in the debate in New Hampshire. But he is, as I said, he's more acceptable, but he isn't going to light anyone on fire. The question is, in this environment, can he emerge?
Huntsman?
I'm sorry, I don't get that candidacy. Yes, CNN had on their Sunday show, they led off with about 15 minutes of him. I'm watching the whole thing with Candy Crowley going, why are they giving the first 15 minutes of the show to someone who no one knows, whose candidacy is hardly compelling other than a lot of establishment Republicans kind of like him in Washington? I have not heard, I don't think, there was a poll done in Iowa by the PPP people, and they literally found one person, a Republican at this point, was for Huntsman. So since it was one person, I can give you the demographic breakdown. That person voted for Obama, wasn't sure how they felt about the campaign, didn't like any of the other Republicans. That is not a strong base if that's your demographic profile to get a Republican nomination.
How about Herman Cain?
Herman Cain is a surprise so far in this race. When I talked about the outsider, the anti-establishment candidate, Herman Cain is that. He won the first debate. There are many people think he'll win the New Hampshire debate. He is the first debate there. He is saying things that people want to hear, much as, by the way, Donald Trump had been doing. But he's got a business background. He's got a real, as somebody said, he's got a real shtick here, and it works very well. And you know what the best line he gets? When he said, I've never been elected to office, he gets standing ovations. Tells you about the mood of politics.
I'll run through some others very quickly. Newt Gingrich.
Well, I think Newt will be joining the world of ideas again soon. I think his campaign has kind of imploded. I've always felt that Newt Gingrich is one of the more imaginative thinkers about politics. I didn't think he was a very good politician. I thought he carried a lot of baggage from the past, whether fairly or unfairly. His campaign is with the staff leaving and all the problems. I think it's over for him. But by the way, I never thought that was his role anyway. I think Newt's role was to help push the idea agenda, which he is a master at.
Rick Santorum?
Well, when you lose your Senate seat by 18 points, and I like Rick personally, we appear in Fox together a lot, I don't understand the rationale for his candidacy. As I said, he lost re-election by 18 points. And I'm, again, listening to the candidates tend to hear, I guess, groundswells that the rest of us miss. And they have better hearing than we do. I haven't heard anything about his groundswell except from him. So I don't take the candidacy seriously.
What about the Palins and Huckabees? Do you think they'll throw their hat in the ring?
Well, let me say this. Palin has not yet. I think that who knows what she's going to do? No one knows. She occupies a big part of the heart. People love her in the Republican Party. Problem is, as the polls show, in 2004, this was the problem Democrats had. Howard Dean probably had the heart of the Democratic Party. They wanted to beat Bush. Kerry was a more electable candidate. I think the Republican Party wants to beat Obama. Palin is a very weak general election candidate, but very high negatives. You've got 42% of Republican voters who say they won't consider voting for her. Yet she is a dynamic unlike anyone else. Huckabee took himself out, but I'll tell you this, if I'm right about how people are reacting to the economy, Obama's numbers continue to go down, this field is going to expand. And we're not by any means done. I think the politics in December will be very different from what they are in June. I think you could see, I mean, I think there'd be some people asking for Huckabee to come back. I don't think he will. I think he's made that decision. I think that Christie becomes, who is the real dark horse. If everyone has a favorite among Republicans who care about politics, it's Chris Christie. And I think he can get a base. And I'll tell you another person. If Obama's numbers go down enough, we'll listen for Jeb Bush. Because if his name were not Bush, there wouldn't even be a fight for the nomination right now. His record in Florida, in terms of Republicans, his ability to appeal to Hispanics, which is a real problem for Republicans. As people say, he's the real he's the real Bush in the Bush family. But if things get bad enough, that the disqualification of being a Bush will disappear. And I think you will see a lot of people, but if this economy continues to collapse, no candidate emerges, I think by fall you'll start hearing a groundswell for him, and it will be a real groundswell.
Give me the one issue that could throw the Republicans way off in 2012.
You know, the Republicans were elected in 2010, Mallory, because they were what I described as the big red default button. There was nobody voting because they loved the Republicans. The independents' attitude about Republicans was very negative. Republicans' attitude about the Republican Party in Washington is very negative. But I think the leadership of the Republican Party in Washington thinks that this was a great endorsement of them, that it was business as usual. If they cave on, and they don't get a real agreement on the raising the debt ceiling, and while I think you're going to have to raise the debt ceiling, the country doesn't, and they are digging their heels in. And if it appears that the House has surrendered on that issue, then you will see the Tea Parties get up and move. Here's the problem. The Tea Parties are affiliated with Republicans because they have no other place to go. They don't care about either party. They care about the issue of the country collapsing, what's happening to spending, what's happening with the economy, and the sense that America is slipping away for their children. That issue is the most powerful potential issue in this election, and I have not yet heard someone in either party or anyone in politics who can articulate the passion of that issue potentially.
One big prediction for the upcoming 2012 election.
Just one?
Give me two.
One is right now, well, I'll give you my as of today, I think the Republicans would lose the House and win the Senate. I think that's a long shot. That may change. The Republicans still have it in their power, but right now, that's where we're headed, number one. Number two is you tell me what the unemployment rate is in December, and I will tell you what's going to happen in the presidential election. Because Obama's problem now, President Obama's problem, is he was elected on hope and change. Well, it was an easy slogan. The problem is most voters, most Americans don't think he's delivered. The White House is counting on a campaign strategy which I lived through myself in 1980, which is we'll just demonize the opposition. You know, or as a slogan, as someone said in 1980, I threw up my hands one day at a meeting in the White House and said, what is our slogan? It could be worse. I mean, this is, you know, I mean, you have to be able to campaign for something. The question for the president is people don't think he's in control. I saw the last week, suddenly the president who is, you know, very personable, who people like, who is a commanding media presence, looked like he was lost out there talking about the economy. And there are shades of Jimmy Carter to that he does not want to have. And so far, they seem at loss. Other than they keep saying what we're doing is good and working, that's not a campaign. That won't work. He's got to get something happening. Real results are going to determine him.
Pat Caddell from Charleston, South Carolina, thanks so much for being here.
Mallory, great to be with you. Thank you so much. Enjoyed it.